Okay, we're back again because we want to help our audience to understand the 10 steps to create the life of their dreams and desires. That's with their health, their wealth, and sex. And so let's start out by introducing ourselves. Hi, I'm Non-Monogamous Mark, and I'm the co-founder of Non-Monogamous Lifestyles Association, where we really help people to discover and explore their sexuality. But it's not all about sex in a non-monogamous life, and so we also help people create the life of their dreams with reference to the health that they enjoy, the wealth that they have, and the sex life that they love. And so who are you?
I am Badass Cat, and I am director of the Relationship Revolution, which is the concept of bringing all of these pieces together in creating the first relationship, which is with yourself, and then the relationship between your health, your wealth, your sex, and relationships with other people.
And so today we're going to go through all 10 steps of what a person needs to really know in order to create the life of their dreams, because we're not taught these things. And that brings us right to the first step, which these steps are in order, and these are steps that we have learned from the life that we have had together. And so the first step is awareness. And now you see, with awareness, oftentimes we really aren't aware. And we aren't aware because what we become aware of are the people that we surround ourselves with. And so therefore, we have the same level of health as the people we surround ourselves with. We have the same level of wealth as the people we surround ourselves with. And most people have the same level of sex as the people they surround themselves with. And that's what creates the problem for us trying to live and thrive in a life that is ethically and consensually non-monogamous, where we are also healthy and we're working to being wealthy. And so, because we're surrounding ourselves with people that are just like us. I know for myself, I surrounded myself with other people who were Christians and people who were into motorcycling and things like that. And then I came to a realization that that wasn't helping my health at all. And while I made pretty decent money, but it certainly wasn't wealth. It wasn't giving me freedom. And that's what we really want to talk about here, is how to go from dependence in your life to start having and being able to have a future where you look forward to a level of freedom. Because here we are, we're about ready to enter into the roaring decade of the 20s. And we want you to be able to, at some point, reach a point in that decade where you start to experience freedom instead of dependence. And that is all in our health, our wealth, and our sex life. And so with awareness, how about you? Was that something that you were even aware of in your earlier life? And what kinds of things are we talking about when it comes to awareness?
A lot of what happens with awareness is that we create ourselves in a society. And the particular society that we live in creates a level of dependence for us. When you look at our medical system, you look at our food systems, our education systems, our relationship systems are all dictated to us by our culture and our society. And it doesn't want you to be aware that there's anything other than what it's feeding you, because it wants to create a level of dependence. That's how it survives. And so I followed along what we called the relationship escalator.
And we live on default.
And you live on default. So society says you date, you get married, you have kids, you build your life together, you retire, and you die. And if somewhere along the line something misses on that escalator, you jump off, and then you go back to the bottom and you start over again. And again, we are not aware. We're not aware that this is actually being fed to us and given to us from the time we're born. From the time we're born. And so I was not aware until something came along after I made a big shift in my life, and that was to end a 25-year marriage. And then I was more open-minded when something came along to introduce me to ethical and consensual non-monogamy.
And with all of this, our health, our wealth, and our sex, then we have down here the relationship revolution, because it's our relationships that can either keep us stuck and anchored to our past. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and we'll erase this here in a moment, but draw a little diagram. So here we are, and this is our what we call our current reality. You know, and that's how we identify ourselves. However, here we are over here with our desires. And what keeps us here instead of moving to here is oftentimes the relationships that keep pulling us back in an area of dependence. Because after all, the people that we hang out with, they have no clue about how to get to freedom.
Right.
You know, even if you hang out with people who are, you know, very affluent in life, live in really gorgeous homes and all this kind of stuff, I'll bet they're trading time for dollars, just like anybody with a job is doing. Mm-hmm. It's just that they're just trading those times for dollars at a higher level, but they don't ever experience the freedom. And that's what we want you to experience with your health, your wealth, and your sex life, is freedom. And so let's go ahead and on to the next second item then, the second step to creating this. And the second step is desire. You see, we mentioned that here just a moment ago, because it's the desire that should guide and direct your life, not the people that keep you anchored and pulled back. It's the desires that you have. That means that, yeah, sometimes you might end up actually needing to pull away from your friends a little bit, even your relatives. We've not done anything like that, though. and so, you know, but it's our desires that are there to guide and direct our lives, to help us to create the lives and know what life that we have to create. You know, some people, their desires are more scientific based, and other people, their desires are more, you know, entrepreneurial based, and others are more engineering based. They want to invent things.
Or more relationship based.
Or more relationship. We all have desires, and it's our desires, though, that can help us to create the health, the wealth, and the sex in our lives that we truly want. So then the next is our identity. And your identity is important to you because you don't want to end up getting stuck with who you are. Now, myself, personally, I had created this identity for myself that kind of got stuck with who I was and then who I became. And that became very limiting for myself. It created some difficulties for me to move past where I was and to move forward. Mm-hmm. How about yourself? Has identity ever created any difficulties for you?
Absolutely. The identities that we create start in our early childhood. And in fact, we've learned recently that our identities also go back even beyond that. And we'll have another video where we share a little bit more about that specific concept. But the idea is that our identity is made up of a multitude of past experiences, present experiences, and things around our DNA and past lives. And so when we take all of those things into consideration, the identity that we end up creating is really based upon experiences that we've had within the first 7 years of life. And during that time, we do not have a lot of the skills or the cognition to actually deal with experiences that we have, whether things are traumatic, things are abusive, or they're just kind of run-of-the-mill lack of awareness that we have been brought up in. We don't know how to process a lot of these things, so we end up creating identities which mask a lot of the things that we don't know how to process. And in that, we bring that into our adulthood, and we don't know how to actually create our desires because we're not aware.
And so for me, my awareness, suddenly one day I woke up and realized, wait a minute, I'm going to spend the rest of my life stuck where I'm at if I don't make some changes. Mm-hmm. And so I have made changes with my health. I was at the age of 49. I made some changes with my wealth. I've done that several times where I've decided that, hey, I've got to change to make some different things happen in my life with my wealth. And with sex, where I became, at the age of 47, I became really unsatisfied with my sex life. It had been 20 years or over 25 years of misery and frustration. And so I decided that it was time for a change, and that's when I approached my wife about opening our marriage. And so awareness was the first thing that came along, and then it was looking at my desires. And so in each of the changes that I have done and made to create my life, then we went from awareness to desire, and then I created that identity, and that identity of being a healthier person, of being a wealthier person, or being a sexier person. And so in order to make that all happen, though, the fourth step is pure positive energy. We refer to as PPE. Because if you don't have pure positive energy, you've got your relationships and everybody in the world around you that keep pulling you back to this area of dependence. Because they don't want you to be free. And so your pure positive energy will give you messages like, well, maybe I don't deserve that. Or maybe I can't do that after all. And so there's different messages that we feed to ourselves. In fact, there are 6 different messages that most of us kind of end up in this pattern of repeating to ourselves.
Right. Our self-sabotage patterns.
Our self-sabotage patterns. And so do you want to talk on any of those?
If I recall, the 6 patterns are: I am not good enough. I am not valuable. I don't have value. I don't belong. I'm insignificant. I need to be perfect. And the last one.
And the last one starts with a C, and I just don't remember right now.
Wait, C.
Complete. We'll
get
to it another time because we'll be going over those in another video. But the main thing is that we really take and end up with this pure positive energy that our energy defeats us. And our energy is our words, our thoughts, and our feelings. And so we allow those to move in the direction of negativity. And when they move us in the direction of negativity, they actually take us then away from everything that we want in our life instead of in the direction of towards what we want in our life. Okay?
So we will be talking a lot more about how to create the pure positive energy, and we have a really fabulous tool that helps us do that.
We do. And so then the step number 5 is to acquire the knowledge, the tools, and the skills.
Okay.
To acquire the knowledge, tools, and skills. Think of a baby that is a newborn, and they're laying there on the floor, and that baby basically has no knowledge, has no tools, and no skills. I mean, can't even raise its head on its own. And so that baby, from that place, clear through their whole life, they're constantly creating and acquiring knowledge, tools, and skills.
That's right.
But as adults, though, we enter this phase in our life where we stop at some point, where we stop acquiring knowledge, tools, and skills that help us to create the health, the wealth, and the sex. And instead, a lot of us end up creating and acquiring knowledge, tools, and skills that start to point us, like we mentioned in the video last time, where they start to point us downhill. Right. Our tools and our skills are like in how we eat and how we maintain our health, and the wealth and what we do to create a job, create wealth in our lives. We go to work and we trade our time for dollars, and that doesn't work. And so you have to acquire a new set of knowledge, tools, and skills. Have anything to comment on that?
The piece around knowledge, tools, and skills is that when we reach a certain level as adults, we have mechanisms in our brain that kick in to try to keep us safe. Mm-hmm. And so what happens is we have created a life with a particular trajectory, like we talked about before, and if we are creating a life that's in a dependent trajectory, when we try to start making those changes to move upwards into freedom, there's going to be your brain kicking in and saying, oh, I'm going to bring you some tools, knowledge, and skills that are going to keep you down here. Because I want to keep you safe, and I want to protect you, because anything else is going to feel very scary, and it's out of your comfort zone, and
they're there to validate those things that you tell yourself. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm just not worthy,
right?
And I'm not perfect. Mm-hmm. I'm not good enough.
Actually, what it does is it keeps you from feeling those things. Because if you were to break out and try something new, you might be judged. Mm-hmm. You might feel like you're not worthy. You might be shown that you're not good enough. Mm-hmm. And so your brain is trying to keep you safe. And that's where the knowledge, tools, and skills stay at a low level if that's the trajectory that you've created.
And that goes right into the step number 6, and that is to have a vehicle with a system. Just simply, when you talk about having good health or having wealth or having great sex, there's not like the world, the energies, the universe, and whatever you believe in spiritually or don't believe in spiritually. It's not like they come along and say, oh, take my magic wand here, and I'm going to make it so that you are the one that's chosen to have great sex life, and you are the one that's chosen to have wealth, or you are the one that's chosen to have health. Right. These are all a matter of just simply the vehicle and the system that we have. Mm-hmm. And so often it's the opportunities that are presented to us that we just then don't see the opportunities, mm-hmm. because we don't have the knowledge, the tools, and the skills, mm-hmm. and we don't have the pure positive energy. When we see an opportunity, we are more skeptical. Mm-hmm. And so instead of being an opportunist, mm-hmm. we're a skeptic.
Mm-hmm. That's very true. One of my favorite quotes is by Joseph Campbell, and it says, we must be willing to let go of the life we planned so as to have the life that is waiting for us. And so many times back here, if we're not having awareness, we're not planning. We have planned a life that really is not open to those new opportunities. We're going down that pathway, and we've got to stick to the pathway. And so letting go of that and being open to the new opportunities is what will help you increase and thrive in these areas.
And this takes us back to awareness, mm-hmm. number 1. And so today we're just going to go through the 10 steps for you. But yes, with each of these 10 steps, we'll be able to dive deeper with you in other videos and other trainings and other opportunities we have for you at a later time. So then the next thing is to have a teacher or a coach.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I know for me, I've been a teacher and a coach and a mentor and a supervisor pretty much my whole life. And I know that in any realm, whether you are in education, whatever business you're in, whatever life trajectory you're in, those people who are at the top of their game, who are truly thriving, all have a teacher and a coach. Every single one of them.
Now, it's usually somebody that's like their buddy that they grew up with, they went to school with, and things like that, though, right?
No. A coach is someone who has actually walked the path you're desiring. So someone who has been there before and is now leading you along the pathway for you to thrive along that journey.
And so it's not the people that I go to work with.
No,
but that's who we, our relatives and our friends and coworkers. Mm-hmm. That's who often we end up turning to, and that's why we talk about with the relationship revolution. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you just have to kind of notch it up a little bit.
That's right.
And sometimes then as you notch it up, mm-hmm. you'll find that you get yourself a new teacher and a new coach, and that starts to then open up the areas of more vehicles and systems for you and knowledge and skills, and it goes all the way up. And so the next step then, step number 8, is what we call the peak to peak principle. going back to that example of a newborn baby laying there, can you imagine that newborn baby looking up? There's mom and dad, and mom and dad, they're just oohing over this little baby, and they're just so in love with the baby, in love with each other, and they just love it in life. They go to work and their jobs, and that little baby just sits there thinking, wow, I want to be married just like them and have a relationship just like them. I want to be going off to a great career just like them. And no, that little baby can't even imagine any of that. And yet, because that baby has so many peaks that baby has to reach before they'll ever get to that place.
Right.
But sometimes in our own lives, because now as adults, we can see out there much farther than we could as a child.
That's right.
And so what we end up seeing is not the next peak or the next 2 peaks. We see 5 peaks down the road, and we want to jump out there and just skip all the other peaks.
That's right.
And that's not how it works.
No. We could also maybe call that baby steps.
Baby steps, one step at a time.
One step at a time.
But
one
the
peak
next
at a
step
time.
is important.
Yes.
And if you allow yourself just to take those small steps, those next steps, not be looking down at the peak way down the road, then over the course of the next 10 years, you will look back and find that it was a sensational time during this next decade because you kept making good progress and moving forward.
Right.
And so then the next thing is having mental breakthroughs. Mental breakthroughs, because oftentimes when we take in as adults, we have our memories. Right now I'm a little concerned about the Seahawks because they're going into the playoffs, and now I think they've lost like their last 2 or 3 games in a row, and that memory then gives them a stigmatization that can really hold them back. And we all do that in our own lives.
Sure.
And it doesn't mean that they're not capable of going all the way and winning all out. And just like in our lives, though, is that we end up having these mental hang-ups and these roadblocks that just end up fogging our ability to move forward. And they keep anchoring us back down here in this area of being dependent instead of being free, and that's whether with health, wealth, or sex.
Yep. All right, and the last one.
And the last step, number 10, is liberation.
I like that word.
And don't end up stopping before you get to liberation. Because oftentimes, and I'll just use the example of our sex life here, for myself, I went from monogamous and whatnot, then became an open marriage, open relationship, and I became sex positive. And that was a good step to make, but that wasn't like where I really needed to head, because becoming sex positive, my wife and I, we then created all kinds of rules to guide our relationship, to protect ourselves, our own insecurities and inadequacies. And that kept us down here then in the area of dependence instead of experiencing freedom. You and I have a different story.
We have a very different story.
We truly have experienced freedom. We didn't start out that way.
No, but we were able to really shift it, and I would say fairly quickly when you look at the scope of a relationship. We were able to move much quicker into a lot of these different areas, and we are now just about to celebrate 6 years together, and we are living a very liberated relationship.
And the same happens with our health. We have to liberate ourselves from the conventional and common thinking, because the conventional thinking is designed to keep you dependent on drugs, dependent on a medical system where you keep having to spend your money on those things, and they never get you well. Okay?
That's right.
And same thing then with liberating ourselves from our knowledge and our ideas of wealth. You know, people, when it comes to wealth, they think, well, you know, I'm doing good on my job. Or I used to think I was doing well in my business. You know, a slow month for me was making $20,000 a month.
Right.
And so I thought I was doing pretty good. But in reality, what I had done, I mean, I enslaved myself.
You did.
I was working 80 hours a week. That was not freedom.
No.
And it wasn't sustainable.
No.
You know, after 15 years, I burned out.
You did. Yeah.
And so we want to take and help you to become liberated with your health, your wealth, and your sex. Right. And one great way to do that is, again, leveling up your relationships. And one of the things with Non-Monogamous Lifestyles Association is we help you to, sometimes it's virtually, like through our videos that we make like this. Other times it's through events that we host. And we're going to be putting on workshops next year. We're going to be hitting the road and doing some traveling around and creating some seminars and workshops. And so that we can teach some of this stuff to people and help you to live a life that is healthier, wealthier, and sexier. And so anything else that you want to add before we go ahead and close this down?
I want to come back to the word that we had written here on the second video. And it really comes down to you taking responsibility for yourself and your life. And again, this is not something that we are taught in general society. From the time we're very young, we are taught to look outside ourselves for everything.
And this is so great to hear her say this, because this was a real difficulty, caused a lot of struggle between us in the early part of our relationship.
Yeah.
And because you were looking at when things that you didn't want to agree with or agree to, and these kinds of things, you were looking as to what was going on out here, as opposed to looking at what was going on in here. And when you finally realized that and learned that, that just totally changed your life.
It completely changed my life. And there is no way I would be living a liberated life today had I not taken my own personal responsibility. And it's not always easy, because you really have to look at yourself and you really have to dig in and say, you know, I created my life. I created where my health is, where my wealth is, where my sex is. I've created the friends that I have, the relationships that I have. That is all my responsibility.
The dependence.
And I've created my own dependence. Now that I take responsibility,
you become aware, you create your desires, your identity, and we'll move you on to creating a life of freedom for yourself, where you'll experience health, wealth, and a sexually free lifestyle.
All right.
Well, thank you very much. Now, I mentioned in the beginning, I'm the co-founder of Non-Monogamous Lifestyles Association. If you want to know more about our association, click on that link down there in the description box. Give this video a thumbs up and give it a like. Or then also, if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, make sure you click on that button to subscribe to the channel and then click on the little bell that comes up afterwards. So thanks a lot. Enjoy your day.
We'll see you next time.